Have you ever found yourself navigating a part of your life that feels entirely unseen or maybe unheard? Maybe it's a deep personal experience that's just incredibly difficult to put into words, or perhaps your best efforts at work seem to just disappear, going completely unnoticed. How do we grapple with these moments? Today, in the deep dive, we're diving into precisely that question. We're pulling together two sources that, well, at first glance might seem worlds apart. On one side, we have these really compelling academic insights from Cornell University exploring mourning and melancholia in postcolonial literatures. This takes us deep into how societies and individuals process profound loss and historical trauma. And on the other, we have a wonderfully practical, really actionable book, Smart, Not Loud, How to Get Noticed at Work for All the Right Reasons by Jessica Chen. Our mission today is to uncover the surprising, maybe even unexpected, connections between these two seemingly disparate worlds. We'll reveal how these kind of deep theoretical insights can illuminate very practical everyday challenges and, vice versa. Ultimately, it's all about understanding a shared human need to articulate, to navigate, and to bring into the light what often feels unrepresentable or simply unacknowledged. Okay, let's unpack this then. We often hear advice about getting over things, finding closure, but what about those deeply impactful experiences that just resist any neat or easy resolution?
That's precisely where the academic discussion around melancholia becomes so insightful. Traditional ideas of mourning often suggest a clear path, like getting over loss, maybe assimilating it into a new normal. But some perspectives argue that this can actually deny the true nature of what was lost, or the unique identity of that loss. Melancholia in this context isn't just sadness, it's actually seen as a kind of resistance against a forced sense of closure, a refusal, really, to let go of something that feels fundamentally unresolvable. And what's fascinating here is how these aftershocks of historical trauma, like colonialism, they don't just exist as abstract history or, in individual nightmares. They manifest in very real sociopolitical conditions and the ongoing lived experiences of descendants, people dealing with lingering discrimination right now in the present day. It's this deep, pervasive sense of unaddressed, lingering impact.
So, if I'm hearing this correctly, melancholia, in this academic sense, is like an active refusal to neatly categorize or simply move past a profound loss.
Yeah.
Because doing that would deny its true ongoing weight. Okay, that makes sense. Now, let's take that idea, this deep, pervasive, unaddressed impact, and think about it in a completely different setting, the workplace. Many of us, especially those from what Jessica Chen calls a quiet culture, can feel just as invisible there, right? We're often taught, work hard, hit your KPIs, don't cause any trouble. And the expectation is that promotions, raises, they'll just follow like clockwork.
Mm-hmm.
Chen herself shares a story that I think really brings this home for a lot of us. She was passed over for a really coveted air show assignment because a loud colleague was just talking about it all week, staying top of mind.
Yeah.
And her boss actually admitted, I forgot you had mentioned it.
Wow. Yeah, that immediately raises an important question, doesn't it? How does our internal experience clash with these external expectations? Chen identifies what she calls a quiet culture bias, this perception that a quiet disposition signifies meekness, maybe even weakness. So if we prefer to keep our heads down and just do the work, we might be seen as good, reliable workers, sure, but maybe not as leaders with that broader vision. And if we don't actively talk about our achievements, well, others might simply assume we don't have any. This bias, she points out, can be further compounded by things like racial or ethnic considerations, leading to what she terms intersectional invisibility. It's a really powerful echo of feeling unseen, not just personally, but, systematically.
So what does this all mean for us then? How do you move from this place of feeling unseen or maybe stuck to actively engaging and articulating your worth? Jessica Chen's book proposes what she calls cultural reframes. These are intentional shifts in behavior for individuals from a quiet culture to really thrive in what is often a loud culture environment.
Right. And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, this is deeply analogous to the whole process of working through trauma. It's not about denying the past or, as some problematic ideas might suggest, simply wiping it from memory, which is particularly harmful when you think about colonialism's often erased histories. Instead, it's about actively addressing the past to confront its repetitions in the present. So just as resisting a forced closure allows for a deeper engagement with historical wounds, Chen's cultural reframes are about actively engaging with workplace norms, not just passively enduring them. Some scholars even argue that intentionally fixating on a specific loss, maybe even recasting it as foundational, can paradoxically lead to new forms of creativity and community. It's about consciously shaping how you interact with reality.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about pretending the past or your quiet nature doesn't exist, but actively choosing how to engage with it. Okay, let's dive into one of Chen's cultural reframes. Engage others.
Hmm.
It's not about just, brain dumping information on people, but thinking strategically about who is going to be there, what do they care about, and critically, how can I align my points with what motivates them?
Huh.
So, for example, when you're presenting to senior leaders, you'd focus your message on, say, resource allocation, the time needed, and the return on investment. Things, leadership probably prioritizes. It's about tailoring that message to connect.
And what's fascinating here, connecting back, is how postcolonial authors like Derek Walcott, despite their really complex ties to both Western and non-Western traditions, skillfully use Western canonical forms while simultaneously invoking non-Western tropes. They do this to challenge those ingrained assumptions about historical trauma. It demonstrates this deep intentional engagement that goes way beyond simple cultural divides or, easy categorization. It's sort of like engaging an audience by speaking their language, but subtly shifting their perspective, just like Chen advises for engaging others.
Yeah, that's a really neat parallel. Okay, another crucial reframe is handle wins, which for many quiet culture individuals means instinctively deflecting praise, right?
Mm,
Minimizing their role, redirecting acknowledgement.
mm, definitely.
But the reframe here is to intentionally share how your work benefits the greater good. Chen tells this story about how she poured her heart into an investigative piece, a tough one, about a sex offender in a nursing home. But when her boss praised her, she immediately downplayed it, said something like, oh, it was no big deal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she later realized she totally muted her own accomplishment and missed a real opportunity to showcase her capabilities for, bigger projects down the line. It's about accepting and broadcasting your value.
And this really parallels a critical debate in trauma studies about something called anti-reparative refusal to work through trauma. While it champions resistance to simplistic closure, which is important, it also risks becoming a kind of generalized discourse of absence, where specific losses, though deeply felt, are never truly articulated or acknowledged publicly. By contrast, Shakespeare Khan's novel Ways of Dying proposes improvisation as an alternative model for responding to traumatic experience. His improvised rites are a way of creating new modes of grief work, rather than fruitlessly trying to recuperate old ones that, frankly, never actually worked in the stereotypical idealization anyway. So just as Mikana's characters find new ways to articulate grief, Chen encourages you to find new ways to articulate your achievements instead of just instinctively muting them.
Finding new ways. I like that. Okay, and finally, manage conflict. For quiet culture folks, the desire to maintain harmony often leads to avoidance, maybe even blaming others sometimes.
Yeah, conflict avoidance is common.
But Chen says the reframe is to proactively tackle problems, provide context, manage expectations, be honest. As she puts it, conflict is often made much worse when people are shocked and caught off guard. It's about facing it head on, but with a plan.
Exactly. And this directly confronts concerns about how traumatic memory gets processed or codified. For instance, some critics raise issues with, say, South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Despite its noble intentions, it sometimes risked freezing the past into these ossified formula, or maybe promoting an agenda to simply forgive and forget without that really deep engagement. Mikada's approach, much like Chen's, emphasizes finding a path that is neither forgetting nor ceaseless acting out, a way to acknowledge and address uncomfortable truths proactively rather than letting them fester or, explode unexpectedly.
Okay, so with all these parallels in mind, this is fascinating. How do we take these powerful insights and actually put them into concrete action in our lives? Chen offers what she calls a quiet capital framework. It's built on 3 pillars to help you get noticed: shaping your career brand, building credibility, and advocating for yourself.
Right, and this leads to another fascinating parallel, this time with the idea of imperfect healing and ongoing processes in trauma. Walcott Someros, for example, actually uses the figure of the scar as an embodied critique of the fantasy of perfect closure. A scar signifies that a wound is, quote, at once sutured and open, cured and incurable. It's a constant mark of the trauma, yes, but it's also a new synthesis. It's never truly healed in that simple, linear sense. It becomes a permanent part of you, but it doesn't have to define your ability to move forward.
So it's about continuous engagement, yeah. Not a one-time fix or expecting things to just neatly vanish. Okay, shaping your career brand. This is all about your reputation. It involves finding your core values, which Brené Brown says should be crystallized in our minds, identifying your unique differentiating factor, Chen's was taking dry business issues and bring them to life, then linking talent to opportunity, like when she pitched an entirely new business show, and finally expanding your reach through consistency, which she says creates a flywheel effect for compounding influence. It's about defining who you are and then consistently sharing it.
And this emphasis on ongoing broad impact resonates really strongly with Kamau Brathwaite's transboundary work. His poetry, especially Born to Slow Horses, depicts these generalized, unhealable wounds that actually transcend national and temporal boundaries. He even brings together historical figures from sort of opposing sides of conflict, like Hitler and Cortez alongside Toussaint Louverture and Nelson Mandela, to stress this need for continual acknowledgement and engagement with history. This reflects what Edouard Glissant describes as a rhizomatic identity. Think of like a ginger plant, right? It doesn't grow from one single taproot, but this interconnected network of roots that spread and intertwine. This idea of identity is extended through a relationship with the other. It's always connected, always evolving. It's about embracing a complex, interconnected sense of self, which seems vital when you're shaping a brand that truly reflects who you are.
That rhizomatic idea, a web of connections rather than just a straight line. I like that. It really resonates with how a career brand can grow organically. Okay, let's turn to the second pillar. Building credibility. This is about gaining respect and trust at work. Chen says respect is actively obtained through the things we do in show, like engaging in small talk before a meeting, discussing industry news, or even just choosing visible seats, little things. Trust, on the other hand, is built more through what we say, especially in those difficult conversations. For this, Chen provides the TACT framework. TACT. Take a moment. Articulate the process. What's going on? What's been done? What's the problem? Communicate solutions, and then talk it out together. It's a structured way to handle those tough situations.
Right, and this process of building credibility, especially in difficult conversations, it kind of contrasts with some trauma theories that might prioritize an impossible mourning to preserve the absolute otherness of a loss. The idea that some things are just too profound to ever fully integrate. However, J.M. Coetzee's later novels, like Disgrace and Summertime, they offer a more nuanced approach, a kind of suspension of mourning through acts of care. Think of David Lurie's care for dead dogs, or Mariana's care for Paul Raymond's amputated leg in Summertime. These are examples of caring for an object that threatens to be lost, which acts as, quote, a simultaneous preparation for and refusal of the threat of future loss. It suggests this provisional route somewhere between rigid ideas of closure and just endless melancholia. So just as these acts of care allow for ongoing engagement with loss without demanding full resolution, Chen's TACT framework allows for a proactive engagement with conflict, addressing the immediate issue while still acknowledging its complexities.
Okay, that makes sense. A provisional route. And finally, the third pillar. Advocating for ourselves. This is about proactively getting what we want. And Chen offers another framework, ACCT. ACCT. First, ask for what you want directly and in a low context, way clear and unambiguous, like her own deliberate request to fill in as anchor for the news. Second, circle back repeatedly. Reframe no as just a redirect, not the end of the conversation. Be persistent.
Persistent, yeah.
Third, celebrate your wins. Articulate the benefit. Be open about the process. Use power words. Don't downplay it. And fourth, learn to turn down requests gracefully using her T framework. Tone, keep it neutral, explain why briefly, and follow up with options if possible. This is how you set clear boundaries.
And this ongoing process, of articulation and re-articulation, both the personal and professional realm, it connects beautifully to the idea of multi-directional memory. This concept avoids seeing history as a zero-sum struggle over narratives. It's not about one story winning over another. Instead, by actively engaging and performing, like the ritualized performances of pain you see in Walcott's Homeros, we can potentially move from individual trauma towards a kind of collective mourning. We establish bonds with witnessing audiences and place loss firmly in the past while still acknowledging its continued presence. So in self-advocacy, it's like you're actively performing your value and engaging your audience, creating connections that acknowledge the past while forging that path forward.
Right. It all comes back to communication, doesn't it? At the very heart of everything we've discussed today is communication itself. And Jessica Chen breaks down communication into three core components: our words, our tone, and our body language. And the breakdown is pretty striking, actually. Body language apparently accounts for a massive 55% of the impression we make, our tone, 38%, and our actual words, only 7%.
Wow, only 7% for the words. That really highlights what some trauma theorists talk about, the incommensurability of experiences. The idea that some profound experience is just, they defy easy verbal representation. So when the what of communication is so profound or difficult to convey, the how, the tone, the body language becomes absolutely paramount. It's about communicating beyond just the literal
Yeah,
words.
exactly. So how do we master these vital tools, especially when maybe we're dealing with those deeper, harder to articulate experiences or just trying to get noticed?
Okay, when it comes to words, Chen says, be succinct. Ask yourself, what's the points I'm trying to make here? Apparently, that's the golden question journalists use to sharpen their speaking.
Hmm.
You can also reduce filler words, those ums and uhs, by embracing intentional pauses. Just pausing is powerful.
Use persuasive points by combining both emotionally driven and quantitatively driven arguments. Appeal to heart and head. And employ the power of the contrast to outline current pain points against future benefits. Show the before and after. Then, for tone, you need to consciously control your pitch, your rate, intensity, inflection, and enunciation. It sounds like a lot, but small changes matter, like varying your speaking rate, maybe speeding up a bit for examples, then slowing right down for key takeaways. That draws your audience in. Strategic intensity, a little louder or softer, can convey urgency or excitement, giving your words more weight.
Makes sense.
And finally, body language. Use it with intention. Maintain eye contact shows confidence, though, always be mindful of cultural nuances there.
Sure.
Use genuine smiles. They attract people. Leverage your hands to emphasize points. Don't keep them locked down.
Yeah.
And practice good posture. It conveys presence and confidence even in virtual meetings. Just position your camera correctly so you're seen clearly sitting up straight.
Yeah, ultimately, this whole process, whether it's dealing with trauma or workplace visibility, it's about continuous learning and adaptation, isn't it? Just as profound trauma often requires new forms of engagement because maybe traditional mourning rites feel inadequate in the modern world, navigating today's complex workplace demands an evolving, really intentional approach to communication. This entire deep dive really has been about the power of consciously shaping our narratives and our presence, moving from passively enduring things to actively influencing them. It's about not just being present, but truly being seen and heard in ways that honor complexity and hopefully foster genuine connection.
We've certainly covered a lot of ground. We've traversed from, the profound landscapes of historical trauma and post-colonial literature all the way to the practical arenas of career branding and workplace communication. And what ties them all together, perhaps surprisingly, is this fundamental human need to bring the unseen into view, to articulate the unsaid, and to transform experiences of vulnerability, maybe invisibility, into powerful opportunities for agency and connection. So as we wrap up, maybe think about your own experiences. What unseen or unarticulated aspects of your life, whether it's from your past, your work, your relationships, are waiting for you to maybe reframe, perhaps to work through in a new way, or simply to intentionally communicate out into the world? What scar might you honor, and what new synthesis might you articulate?